Hello, dear friends. Fear versus love and security versus freedom is the eternal struggle of mankind. A word to the wise is enough. Opinion piece. Fear versus spirituality. The art of becoming courageous. Cowards cannot be moral. Life begins where fear ends. There is a spiritual battle raging. In Afghanistan, Christians are persecuted. In China, Falun Gong members are imprisoned. Muslim countries hang dissidents. Courage is the first requirement of the spirit. Religion is for people who fear hell. Spirituality is for those who have already been there. Don't let anyone or anything divert you from your center. Hope can be lost in the darkest of times. All this is disintegrating and can no longer be maintained. Beware of fears, for they love to steal your dreams. Fear is used to turn you against your own spirituality. Fear severs the link to the original source of creation. Never buy fear. Never give your power to anyone or anything else. The wicked flees with no one in pursuit, but the righteous is confident as a lion. Let's start. Fear is a weapon of social control used today to control practitioners of alternative spirituality by manipulating thoughts and actions without people knowing it. Since the Inquisition disappeared in Christian countries, many other countries today use fears to repress spiritual people, especially in China, with the persecution of Tibetan lamas, and in some extremist Muslim countries. There is a spiritual battle raging. The goal is to eradicate the spirit from humankind and give way to the cyborg and the droid man-machine of Robocop. Religion is believing in someone's spiritual experience. Spirituality is about having your own experience, according to Deepak Chopra. Religion is for people who fear hell. Spirituality is for people who have already been there, according to David Bowie. We are born in love, and we have learned fear here. The spiritual journey is about unlearning fear and accepting love in our hearts, according to Marianne Williamson. All societies and cultures, all religions, have committed a crime against humankind. They have created the fear of nothingness, of emptiness. Nothing is to be feared when you are in the present, in the now, according to Eckhart Tolle. Jesus warns us against the temptation to close ourselves in the present for fear of being snatched away by the novelty of the uncertain future, according to Arturo Sosa Abascal. It is always worth smiling even if the trial you are going through is unbearable. Smile and keep your spirits up. Smile is a powerful ally against apathy and fear. It is capable of illuminating the face of one who receives it and gives hope in the midst of pain, according to a Twitter pill. Fear is the anguish for a real or imaginary risk or damage, and the spirituality is the nature and spiritual condition of a very sensitive person who is not interested in the material. The spirit is an immaterial being endowed with reason. It is the generating principle of everything, or the essence of substance of something. It is also the natural vigor and virtue that encourages and strengthens the body to act and gives courage, encouragement, verve, effort, vivacity, and ingenuity. Spirituality is the highest dimension of the person. It is their moral, psychic, or cultural disposition possessed by those who tend to investigate and develop the characteristics of their spirit. This decision usually implies the intention to experience special states of well-being, such as salvation or liberation. It is also related to the practice of virtue. Definition: fear is an emotion characterized by an intense and unpleasant sensation provoked by the perception of danger, real or supposed, present, future, or even past. It is a primary emotion that derives from the natural aversion to risk or threat, and is manifested in all animals, including humans. But the animal is frightened at the moment of real danger, while the human being is obsessed with imaginary dangers. The ultimate expression of fear is terror. Moreover, fear is related to anxiety. In the military, a large part of soldier training, especially in the special forces, is oriented towards fear control in order to train soldiers, officers, and commandos who are self-confident and effective in their actions. To this end, soldiers are confronted with fear-inducing scenarios, such as crawling under barbed wire while being attacked by machine gun fire and explosions, and walking over minefields, guerrilla warfare, hand-to-hand combat, etc. Monotheistic religions evidence a type of religious fear, the fear of God, and each one, from Judaism to Islam, has developed its particular theology in this regard. It is worth mentioning that certain religions resort to indoctrinate in the infantile learning period with threats of infinite and eternal suffering if one doesn't believe in their postulates and if one doesn't comply with their norms. This was masterfully expressed by the Danish philosopher Søren Kierkegaard in his book Fear and Trembling, which was the origin of existentialism. Other religions, such as Buddhism, are directly based on the need to avoid pain and suffering, and therefore indirectly have a special relationship with fear. In Christianity, fear is related to an individual's behavior and conscience. In quotes, "The wicked flees and no one pursues him, but the righteous is confident as a lion. Proverbs 28:1. Alternative spirituality. If you were an early Christian, you had to be careful not to become food for a lion. Once Christianity was established, if you were a pagan or witch, you had to be careful not to be burnt at the stake. The persecuted became the persecutors. This instinct was reinforced over generations, and those who survived through fear raised their children to survive in the same way. Today in China, Falun Gong practitioners are still victims of imprisonment, torture, and live organ removal, or in a strict Middle East country where they could be hanged for expressing alternative spiritual beliefs. In the Western world, rather than physically preventing people from practicing spirituality, propaganda influences social attitudes so that people avoid exploring alternative spirituality, ridiculing or labeling as cultists all who are not materialistic, because the official doctrine is materialism. This exposure to negative descriptions of alternative spirituality throughout society creates a vicious cycle of fear. As a result, alternative spirituality is portrayed as harmful in the mainstream media and on the internet. People are bombarded with so many negative descriptions that they naturally begin to fear alternative spirituality and project their conscience onto harmless groups. By being afraid, people develop avoidance conditioning, which restricts their own interest in spirituality and often the interest of their loved ones. Once people are made to fear alternative spirituality, it's much easier to engineer consent for the repression of its practitioners. Luciferian agenda. But fear can also be used as a mechanism to control us. Scientists have long been fascinated by the fear reaction and have conducted many studies to try to understand how fear becomes conditioned. The greatest advances in this field have been in the field of behaviorism, the materialistic theory that animal and human behavior can be explained through conditioning. The anti-cult movement willingly helps the media promote its own agenda by providing information, expert commentary and personal testimony for news stories, conveniently highlighting the most extreme behaviors of a small number and ignoring the characteristics that most resemble the rest of society. The propaganda media amplifies the stereotype that all believers are dangerous, despite the fact that the opposite is usually true. Although there are always extremists everywhere, even among materialists. The Luciferian agenda has advanced in such small steps that few have noticed this shift toward tyranny. But now the time has come to push. The soulless beings who created this 10th dimension have been toying with us for a long time. Our bodies have been modified and our consciousness has been reduced to the extent that it is difficult to distinguish a flock of sheep from the people on the street. The Dragons of Eden. Carl Sagan, in his book The Dragons of Eden, shows evidence that the volume of the human skull increased by 33% at some point in the distant past. The increase in size was caused by the addition of the frontal lobes, the neocortex that gave us self-awareness. It gave us the self, the almighty ego. And God said, Genesis 3:22, man has now become like one of us, knowing good and evil. He must not be allowed to stretch out his hand and take also from the tree of light and eat, and live forever. Carl Sagan also shows that there were modifications in the female pelvis to allow the passage of larger heads. And God said to the woman, Genesis 3:16, I will greatly multiply your pain in childbirth. In pain you shall bring forth children. And God cursed Eve with painful childbirth. So that is the next step in this diabolical agenda. Could it be the destruction of our spiritual link to the original source of universal creation? By reinforcing the prison of the five-sense world that would make their wet dream of transhumanism much easier to establish. Rudolf Steiner thinks that the spirits of darkness are now among us. We have to be, in all of this in quotes, we have to be on our guard so that we can realize what is happening when we encounter them and have a real idea of where they are. The most dangerous thing you can do in the immediate future will be to unconsciously give yourself over the influences that are definitively present. The Dead Sea Scrolls constantly speak of the war between the children of light and the children of darkness. Becoming courageous. When we release the old thought forms surrounding the self, release the energy of the old life, densities begin to break down. Our sense of identity changes and everything in our world takes on a different perspective, a different expression of our new self, and we become courageous. I suspect we are the remnant. The quiet voice of spiritual reality has spoken to us and given us Rudolf Steiner's understanding. Beyond the ideas of doing wrong and doing right, there is a field. When the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to speak, according to the Sufi mystic poet Rumi. A path takes us beyond duality into the field of oneness, where there is no inside or outside, or up and down, a place where our intuition and our head converge, where our inherent knowledge comes from a different level of reality far beyond the world of the five senses. Spiritual reality has brought us this far. It is the only source of stability and strength in which we can feel comfortable. The Creator's source has blessed us with clarity and vision. We see truth where others see only lies. We no longer have to swim against the current because we have become courageous standing in spiritual reality. We no longer cower in fear and humble ourselves to anyone's feet. We are the remnant. We are the emissaries of the Creator of Source, placed at this time to serve the field of oneness. So we are not alone. Let us stand firm and be a force for one another. Miracles. Miracles are unfolding by Judith Castle. It is time to rise above the old earth and all that was ever created on it, shedding the old self and all that has gone before. All of this is disintegrating and can no longer be maintained, no matter how much some are making a desperate attempt to keep it all in place. The more they try to keep things in place, the more holes appear and, in fact, the more the sun slips through their fingers. By divine decree, planet Earth has ascended and therefore the new Earth is here vibrant, exquisitely beautiful, and a totally new creation. When we step fully into it, we are a new creation. Indeed, it has a new form, and indeed, we step into the fullness of our soul power, and indeed, the fullness of our soul, and we embrace the divinity within. We embrace the power of love, and we live this. We live the highest truth of the soul, and we cannot be anything other than this. Stay centered. Let nothing and no one divert you from center. Live your highest truth, and in fact, never buy into fear and fear consciousness or give your power away to anyone or anything. The highest aspect of your soul's truth and the new earth is fearless, and therefore live your highest soul's domain and imbue every present moment with pure, unconditional and inspired love, to shape the gifts and purpose of your own soul and being in the new earth. Every present moment, every present step you are taking is actually anchoring into your new soul life on the new earth, and you are co-creating the new golden age. Warriors of light use your God-given abilities to fight evil in a spiritual struggle. We are in an unprecedented time. Buckle up, it's going to get chaotic. Timing is everything, according to Dave Haves. Afghanistan. US pulls 7,800 people out of Kabul as it seeks creative ways to speed up evacuations. The US managed to get 7,800 people out of Kabul this Sunday, August 2022, raising the number to 25,000 so far this week. The operation is being carried out with military and civilian aircraft, as the government requested cooperation from commercial airlines. US hires commercial airlines to help move evacuees from Afghanistan. The US has enlisted the help of 6 commercial airlines to help transport people after their evacuation from Afghanistan, as Washington seeks to accelerate the pace of departures of American and Afghans at risk in Kabul. There is a long way to go in the Afghanistan evacuation, and many things could still go wrong, according to Biden. The president said the administration expects the Afghanistan evacuation to be completed before the self-imposed August 31st deadline. Nothing that there is still a long way to go and many things could still go wrong, in quotes. France asks US to make Kabul operation last as long as necessary. France wants the US to allow and facilitate the evacuation from Kabul of citizens of its allied countries and all Afghans whose lives are at risk, and that means making the operation at the airport last as long as necessary and have greater coordination. Spain will remain in Kabul as long as the Americans are there. The Minister of Defense, Margarita Robles, said Sunday that the key of the evacuation in Afghanistan is the time that US troops can control the Kabul airport, so that Spain will remain there as long as the Americans are there. Robles has visited with the Chief of Defense Staff, Admiral Teodoro López Calderón, the camp that Spain has installed at the base to accommodate the evacuated Afghans, and thanked the Spanish military for the work they are doing in this crisis, which is an unprecedented, in quotes, unprecedented humanitarian drama, not without recognizing that what has happened there is a failure of the West. Biden admitted that delaying the evacuation of Kabul was a disastrous decision. British troops are trying to rescue Americans trapped in Kabul after Biden refused to rescue thousands of Americans in trouble. British, French and German troops are crossing Taliban lines to rescue their citizens in Kabul, putting pressure on Biden to extend the evacuation. US has to ask Taliban for permission to evacuate. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has agreed with the reality that the US has to negotiate the evacuation of US citizens with the Taliban. The hasty withdrawal of troops from Afghanistan is now being widely criticized by both Democrats and Republicans, and some believe it would have been more reasonable for the administration to have transferred the remaining citizens as weapons out of the country before withdrawing troops. Putin wants that terrorists and Taliban fighters disguised as refugees could leave Afghanistan amid chaos. President Putin has said that the overnight collapse of the US-backed government in Afghanistan could pose a serious threat to countries surrounded the troubled Central Asian nation, including his own. Ahmad Massoud warns the Taliban that they will meet his stiff resistance if they try to attack the Panjshir Valley. Ahmad Massoud, the leader of the Afghan National Resistance Front, which groups the opposition to the Taliban from the only province not in the hands of the insurgents, flatly ruled out surrendering the Panjshir Valley as demanded by the movement. In this sense, he assures that the opposition forces will give an answer to the Taliban if they try to take control of this area, as he expressed in declarations to Al Arabiya channel. The real enemy, in quotes, the real enemy of the Islamists is not neocolonialism or Western military aggression, but our immoral culture, according to Slavoj Zizek. Ayatollah Khomeini once wrote, in quotes, "We do not fear sanctions, we do not fear military invasion. What we fear is the invasion of Western immorality. And it is this fear that fuels the Taliban." Now, events. At least 21 dead in Tennessee floods, dozens missing after torrential rains. At least 21 people were killed by flooding and dozens are missing in just one Tennessee county after more than 15 inches of rain inundated the central region of the state, trapping some residents up to their necks in water. Magnitude 7 earthquake shakes South Sandwich Island. Less than 24 hours earlier, the Southern Atlantic Ocean in the area of the South Sandwich Islands was hit by a magnitude 7.1 earthquake. Tremors had been reported in the area for nearly a week. Cuba maintains medical brigade in Haiti. Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez Parrilla highlighted the work the Cuban Medical Brigade that collaborates in the attention to the victims of the earthquake that shook Haiti last August 14th, and reiterated that they will remain in that Caribbean nation as long as the Haitian people need them. Europe. Corsica beaches closed due to mad cows. Authorities on the French island of Corsica have closed beaches after aggressive cows began attacking tourists and locals. Greek teenager confesses to 9 fires because he liked to see flames and smoke. A 14-year-old Greek teenager has admitted to being the author of 9 of the 13 forest fires that between 5 and 17th August affected the town of Theologos in the region of Theotide, Greece, according to local media. Spain will declare catastrophic zone the burnt areas. The Spanish government will declare the communities affected by the fires a catastrophic zone. On Tuesday, the Council of Ministers will classify as areas seriously affected by a civil protection emergency, among others, the largest forest fire of the year, suffered in Avila in the community of Castilla-León. It originated after a car caught fire following an accident near the municipality of Navalcruz. It burnt more than 20,000 hectares of scrubland, oak, grass and pine. Germany. The military tunnel system under the Arberg Mountains was more than 17 kilometers long. There were 199 workshops, 936 lodgings, living quarters and even a hairdressing salon. Some 20,000 people were involved in the construction and maintenance of the government bunker. More than 3,000 members of the government would have found refuge there. The alternative headquarters of the constitutional organs of the Federal Republic of Germany in crisis and war. The official title of the bunker is considered to be the most expensive and one of the most absurd individual investments in the history of the Federal Republic of Germany. Deputies actually simulated possible war scenarios in the Arweiler bunker as nearly as the 60s. It is quite amazing that 2 of these bunkers are located in these flood-affected areas. Anti-drone suitcase invisible to radars presented in Russia. The system, which has been demonstrated in the Armilla 2021 forum, is capable of locating the control panel of unnamed robots and neutralizing the communication channel between the operator and the aircraft. The new complex locates and destroys intruder drones sector by sector, allowing it to be used for targeted suppression of specific intruder drones. An amulet of the Egyptian goddess Hathor, about 3,000 years old, found in Spain. A group of archaeologists have found an amulet and necklace beds of Hathor, the Egyptian goddess of joy, motherhood and love, about 3,000 years old, in the site of Cerro de San Vicente in Salamanca, Castilla-León. And that's all for today. Thanks a lot, dear friends.